Hello, everyone. This is Bridget Alton with the Right Vision Group, and I'm here with your weekly media tip. Today, we're talking about how the news works, and I'm going to give you 3 points about how you submit news, how you have contact with reporters that I hope will shed a little bit of light on how you actually pitch your story and what things are appropriate when it comes to pitching your story. The first thing I want you to remember is that reporters do not take money for reporting on your story. They are journalists and they are typically compensated by the publication or the media outlet that they report for. You don't pay them to cover you. So you can't call up someone for the 5 p.m. news and say, hey, how much do you charge to come out and cover my story? It doesn't quite work that way. Once any money changes hands, the objectivity goes out of the window. And this is actually why they have, and they being several media outlets, usually have ethics codes, and there's a very low limit for things like gifts or things of value that reporters can take, because their stories are supposed to be objective and balanced. And once something of value changes hands, that calls into question the objectivity. So the first thing I want you to remember is that you will never pay a reporter at a traditional media outlet to come cover your story. Okay? The second thing I want you to know is that if you do pay somebody to quote unquote cover you or interview you, I think you should submit a script, because essentially what you've paid for is an advertisement. Because journalists do not get paid by their subjects or by their sources to cover certain stories, if someone does charge you, it's essentially a commercial. So you ought to be able to write the script for that. So just kind of keep that in mind as all of these blogs and internet radio stations and all of these different things come up. If it is true journalism, they will not be charging you for that. They will not charge you to actually run your story or to cover your story or anything like that. The last thing I want you to remember is to please do the research before you submit anything to a particular media outlet. The reason why I say that is because some people will write their own stories or cover their own events and submit that to a media outlet to be published or to be aired or to be broadcast. And sometimes that works with smaller media outlets. Sometimes they may take submissions, they may take your photos, they may take your stories. But with bigger outlets, typically that's what the reporters who work for that outlet, that's what they're for. That's their job, to cover that story. So before you go through the trouble of writing something or taking a bunch of pictures and submitting it to a media outlet, make sure that you do your research to be sure that that outlet actually accepts outside submissions. So there are a couple of things that I really want you to keep in mind when you're trying to figure out the best way to pitch your story and who to pitch it to. The first is that reporters will not take any money to cover your story. That is not ethical, and most journalistic standards, I will venture to say all journalistic standards, prohibit that. Prohibit the exchange of anything of value for coverage of your story, because reporters have to be objective. The second thing is that if you do pay for someone to publicize you, that's your commercial, that's your advertisement. So when you submit the check, also submit a script, okay? And the last thing is that if you are considering your own submission for a media outlet, make sure that you do the research first and that you are actually contacting a media outlet that accepts submissions, so you don't want to waste your time there, okay? So this is Bridget Alton with your media weekly media tip. I said that all kinds of backwards, didn't I? With your weekly media tip, and we're talking about how the news works. So I really want you to remember those points. Meanwhile, you can follow us on Twitter, or you can log on to our website at www.thewvg.com to keep up with the different tips and information that we have to help you pitch your news to the news. Thanks so much. Till next week.